How did I do that? I clicked on your name.
Okay, we're set. Start talking, we're recording.
All right, here we go. Back here. So again, it is my sincere pleasure to welcome Julie Roth, manager of Solarize Ann Arbor. Julie's presentation tonight is the Solarize Ann Arbor model for local solar engagement. Tonight's presentation will build on our introductory 3-month-long framing of clean energy in Michigan from the perspective of solar industry, electric utilities, and state government. All of the following seminars address how, within this framework, can the solar train be brought up to full speed. In 2016, the City of Ann Arbor Energy Commission produced a solar development readiness report that identified barriers to solar development in Ann Arbor, things like solar taxation, an onerous permitting process, lack of awareness, et cetera, and used a mapping program that showed well over 100 megawatts of distributed solar potential spread fairly evenly across the entire community. The report ended with a strong recommendation that the city remove identified barriers and embark on a concerted Solarize initiative aimed at the installation of 78 megawatts of new solar in accordance with Ann Arbor's 2021 Climate Action Plan. In 2020, the City of Ann Arbor's Office of Sustainability and Innovation launched a new solar program led by Julie Roth, A20 Solarize Program Coordinator. The program reached an important major milestone in 2021. 1 megawatt of new solar installed through this program. The Solarize Ann Arbor program is a goal to install 78 megawatts of solar under the A20 program in accordance with the recommendation from the Solar Readiness Report that we did earlier. So with that, I'd like to turn this over to Julie to begin her presentation. Again, please mute yourself, and you can raise hands at the end, and we'll take questions at the end.
Thank you, Mark. Thanks so much. One clarification. The City of Ann Arbor has a goal of 78, 76 megawatts, but not just Solarize. That'll be through multiple avenues of solar adoption. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Thank you for the kind introduction. Alrighty. All right. Does that all look good? And see that? All right, great. So thank you for being here. This is what we're going to talk about today. I'm going to talk a little bit just briefly about Ann Arbor's carbon neutrality plan and why Solarize and sort of how this all came about. And I'm going to introduce you to how the Solarize program works and the successes that we've had. And then I'm going to introduce you to a toolkit that we created so that we could give away what we have invented, I guess. My goal has always been to just save the planet. And so I have no proprietary interest in anything that I develop. I simply want to get more renewable energy everywhere. And so worked hard on making a toolkit that makes it easy for other municipalities, nonprofits, environmental groups, individuals to be able to launch a Solarize group. So for those of you who are not aware, Ann Arbor has adopted a initiative called A20, which has audacious goals, namely getting to carbon neutrality community-wide by 2030. So this is a little snapshot of where we've been and where we need to go in terms of our community-wide emissions. You can see we've been making progress since 2000, but not nearly at the speed that needs to happen. Not bad, given that we've increased in our population during that time and still managed to come down, but you can see how steeply that curve has to do a nosedive in order to meet our goals. This little snapshot on the left shows where our emissions are coming from. About a third of them are from University of Michigan. And some of you may know that the University of Michigan has just published their own recommendations around carbon neutrality. I think that still needs to be adopted formally by the regents and the president, but hopefully that will happen. We have about 23% coming from the residential sector, namely mostly buildings, 22% from the commercial industrial built environment, and then about 17% from transportation. So the big picture of A20 has basically 6 overarching strategies of how we're going to get there. And the first 3 are all wrapped up in Solarize, and Solarize is trying to address some of those first 3. The first one is powering our electric grid with 100% renewable energy. And there's 3 ways to do this. We've got to build it in our footprint. We've got to buy what we can't build. We've got to procure it, right? And then we have to save it. Any amount of energy not used is an amount of energy we don't have to generate, or renewable or otherwise. So deep efficiency. Number 2 is switching our appliances and vehicles from fossil fuels to that clean electricity. So instead of burning gas in our homes, as the grid gets cleaned up or we have distributed generation, we're switching the fossil fuels that we're burning in our cars and our homes to that clean electricity. And then the third, as I said, improving energy efficiency, because this is going to be a massive electrification initiative. And that will not only tax the grid quite a bit, but create even more need for that renewable energy. So the biggest bang for our buck is trying to reduce how much we're using. The other 3 strategies are around reducing the number of miles we travel in our vehicles, changing the way we use, reuse, and dispose of materials to a more circular economy, and enhancing the resilience of our people and place, because climate change is here and it is not going anywhere. So the Ann Arbor Solarize is part of the build, right? The build part of how to get more renewable up. So the idea of Solarize, as you probably all know if you are here at the GLREA meeting, the concept was originally rolled out under Obama's Department of Energy as a way to incentivize rooftop solar via group buys. It was initially piloted, I believe, in Portland, Oregon, and it's been adopted in many different cities since then. But in a very different model than the one that we've been using in Ann Arbor. So essentially, a Solarize in most cities is a large RFP kind of structure, right? Request for proposals, just like everyone's kind of familiar with, like our Ann Arbor City just issued a municipal solar RFP, put it out to large solar installers. Bids are evaluated, the vendors chosen based on those factors that are targeted, and then outreach to residents in the Solarize programs would begin to get people into the group buy over a long period of time. And this was a successful model. This got solar up in Portland. It got solar up in many different places. It's not what we did in Ann Arbor. And there's a number of reasons for that. First off, I'll go back here for a second. It requires some capacity, right, to run an RFP. You need legal capacity to be able to evaluate bids. You need to be able to have a panel or entity who is choosing your installer based on very transparent methods. And it tends to favor very large installers who can handle very large groups, as opposed to supporting small businesses in the region, right? And at the beginning of A20, when all of this was happening, we were still generating A20. We didn't have any capacity to like take a bathroom break, much less launch another giant program. So we started small. We started with a tiny little thing that I'm going to describe, and then it grew and grew and grew, which is what makes me think that this is very reproducible for other people who want to start with a tiny thing and then see if they can grow it. So in the Ann Arbor model, we have, instead of the city or an entity choosing an installer based on an RFP, we have residents who choose the installer that they want to work with. And people choose installers for any number of reasons. Sometimes it's who has the lowest price. Sometimes it has to do with service and professionalism, the panel types that are being used, the warranties that are offered, because you really like the salesperson's tie or mannerism. Who knows why people choose their installers the same way they wouldn't choose any other kind of contractors. So the community member chooses, a resident chooses an installer. Then we approach the installer to proposed doing a tiered discount structure with a group. And the idea is that they set an initial price per watt range for the group based around the bid that they gave the resident, and with the understanding of the average price per watt in Michigan being sort of publicly generated in our meetings. And then a tiered discount structure based on how many people decide to go solar in this smaller group. Then the resident invites his or her community and network of contacts to an event. And the event is the meeting, and it's a big, fun educational session all about solar, all about H20. And the installer is there doing a question and answer for everybody. Folks get to come and investigate this new technology with their peers and see their community members asking questions. And it adds to kind of a feeling of safety in investigating solar, as opposed to just calling an installer to your house who's going to try and sell you something, which is not something everyone's willing to do when they're just investigating it. We generally have a 2-month window for the group buy. And then the project manager, which is me, I assist with outreach for the event and in coordinating the event, and then tracking interest after the event. So I help the installers, because the installers are often slammed with a whole bunch of estimate requests, which is not usually how they operate. They usually operate with a steady trickle of estimate requests. And so they need help kind of managing that. And then as the program grows, as ours have, we now have 12 installers that participate in the program, and we've pre-negotiated discounts with all of them, so they know how the program works. And if someone approaches me and asks that they want to do a Solarize program, they either can choose someone who's already agreed to the program, or try and onboard another installer that they want to use. We can approach them. So the benefits of this model is it's really easy to start, right? Low barriers to start it up with a pilot. If you are a little environmental group, or if you are a municipality without a whole staff of environmental sustainability people, but like one guy in the Energy Commission who's just really excited about trying something, it can be started with like a person. It's low administrative costs, right? And as it grows, it can benefit many local and regional small business installers, which I like a lot. And the feedback I've gotten has been that they've grown. It's resident-driven outreach. And this is really how it works, I think, because the city can only do so much outreach to engage people, and then we're in echo chamber. So I can probably publish, we have a Solarize group 3 or 4 times, at which point I'm just hitting the same people over and over again. But if Mark wants to run a Solarize group, he knows a different cohort of people than I do. And so he does outreach to his church group, his community groups, his friends and neighbors, and the people he works with. And it's like a Venn diagram of all of Ann Arbor. We hope to hit everybody at some point through residents outreach. So this speaks to that. The municipal outreach, so sort of we run into echo chamber, and as I mentioned before, this sort of peer-to-peer. Oh, Mark says I should come. Let's go see what Mark's doing. Mark's having an event, that kind of thing. So this was our pilot. This was our very first Solarize. It was in my house. This is pre-pandemic, right? Just late 2019. And we had one resident enthusiastic about going solar. That was me. One installer willing to offer the group discounts. There he is. And then it was very funny because really, Missy and I thought there would be 3 people at my dining room table awkwardly trying not to make eye contact with the installer, myself, or each other in some like horrible version of a Tupperware party. And that is not what happened. I literally put out Facebook posts and some social media things into the neighborhood, and then 40 people showed up. It was bewildering, actually. And from that one group, 12 new arrays went up, which was also stunning. I didn't know how stunning at the time, but Missy promised it was unusual. So after 18 months of doing this, we now have over 1.3 megawatts of new solar through the program. We've completed 10 groups. We have 5 currently in process and several more that are pending that are going to be starting in the next few months. We've saved residents over $600,000 through the savings in the group discount savings. This represents somewhere around 200 new installations in Ann Arbor and the surrounding area. So we enable anyone in Washtenaw County to participate with this program. I drew the line around Washtenaw County just from a purely capacity of my own capacity to be able to run this program. When I originally envisioned it, I thought that installers would want to do very small geographical areas as a group buy. And it turns out that installers think that Ann Arbor or even Washtenaw County is a pretty small geographical area compared to what they're used to doing. So they were fine with doing a wider net of outreach. It's been beneficial for installers because we generally average around 44 people per meeting. That's the target is 40, try to get 40 there. We usually get somewhere then around 30 or so estimates, which usually about half of them turn into sales, which is a really nice ratio of how much work an installer is doing, creating estimates that turn into sales. That's the high ratio, according to the installers. I am not an installer, so I don't know. There's a different metric in Ann Arbor because Solarize works throughout Washtenaw County, although mostly in Ann Arbor, but we have plenty of people who have installed in the townships and surrounding towns in Ann Arbor. And then there are people who install solar in Ann Arbor who are not working through the Solarize program, right? There are also plenty of people who come to a Solarize meeting, get really excited about solar, get some outside bids and choose a different installer, which is great. I don't really care how solar goes up. I just would like it to go up. So we also track what's happening in Ann Arbor with solar outside of my own metrics from the Solarize program. And we won't have 21 numbers for a while because we're in 21, but I think it's going to skyrocket. But this is sort of a graphic representation. Now, 2019 was special. So if you look at permits per year down here on the left, blue, you can see an average number of permits per year in Ann Arbor was about 30 until 2019. And that was the year that net metering sunsetted. And so anyone who was waiting to go solar pretty much went solar in 2019 because they were watching that and they got in under the net metering grandfather. Our program started after net metering sunsetted at the very end of 2019. So my array came up after. And so the expectation in 2020 was that we'd come back down to the baseline, and we obviously surpassed even the year that net metering sunsetted. And I'm so excited to see what happens this year. So we'll see. So the feedback about the program from installers and from residents has been largely positive. The longer we do this, the more we smooth out the bumps. Most of the bumps have been around capacity and not realizing quite how much, how to help with the sudden influx of estimate requests, and therefore make sure that communication and expectations about speed were managed. But overall, like I said, feedback has been positive. Installers said at the beginning of the pandemic, it helped stabilize their business because they were in panic mode. I know new jobs have been created from the program: engineers, salespeople, installation crews, paid interns. Skeptical installers initially, once they do one group, acknowledge that they definitely have cost savings on their soft costs, and they really do pass those savings on to the customers. So the savings that they have from generating sales is basically eliminated. The administrative help from me in trying to manage the group is very helpful. And then residents say it's helped them overcome inertia. Like, they thought about it. It was sort of in the back of their mind, or they saw it on a neighbor. They just had never moved on it. It's a safe way to investigate a new complex subject, and there's comfort in pure presence. And they basically say it was easy. So how the meetings go is basically how we talk about how solar works, the costs and payback time. We talk about DTE, the federal tax credits, the discount structure. We talk about Michigan Saves and how to finance these things, the greenhouse gas emissions reductions. We talk about batteries. There's tons of questions about batteries and roofs. We also throw in lots about energy efficiency and electrification because, as we like to say at the city, solar is like the sexy, shiny things that gets people into a meeting. Nobody comes to a meeting about energy efficiency because why? Because no, that's not that. No one does. So you bring them in with solar and then you help them understand how this all works together with efficiency and electrification. And in fact, we just had a heat pump workshop last night, populated in large part by folks who had come to Solarize meetings and learned about electrification and the importance of it. And people are always encouraged to get outside bids if they wish. And about half of them probably do. We want to keep the costs low that way without micromanaging things. And that tends to accomplish that. So this is generally how most of the Solarize group buys are run. We have one installer who tends to come in very, very low and has already reduced soft costs. So they have a different discount structure, but most of them do this. If 3 or more new arrays move forward, everyone gets 5% off their whole project. If 7 or more move forward, everyone gets 10% off. And if 10 or more, everyone gets 15% off. And so we kind of calculate it as the 2 months go, and I update the group regularly with how the group is doing. So now I want to show you something else. This is the toolkit that we have developed, and I have to stop sharing in order to reshare because apparently that's how Zoom works. So now I'm going to share again.
While you're doing that, Julie, I'll jump in for a second. So we just formed a new neighborhood association in the neighborhood that I've done, and I'm doing a Solarize project that kicks off this Sunday, and we've got 35 people signed up, and we just started this thing, a little over a month ago. When I put my solar system up in 2016, I tried to get some other neighbors involved, but it was like one at a time. When we did that through our neighborhood association, we were able to send out a blast to, everybody in the neighborhood association. And we got, 10 people within 2 weeks. So it moves fast. And I think the fact that I wasn't selling anything made a huge difference.
So that's a big deal, Mark. I'm not selling anything. I don't have any vested interest in anybody getting solar other than I'm trying to save the planet. The host of a group, sometimes it's someone who already has solar and they just want to share the love. Sometimes it is a person who is getting solar also. And the only thing they get is the same discount as everyone else if the numbers are reached. So the only person selling anything is the installer. and it's very low pressure meeting. I absolutely refuse to have any kind of a high pressure sales meeting because it's just not in my nature. It's educational, informative, and an opportunity. So this is the toolkit that we've developed, and I can send Mark and John a link that can be shared out afterwards. This is publicly available. Okay, so everything in here you can access. There are 4 folders in here. The first one is called Using the Solarize Toolkit, which just has a few little informational flyers about what is Ann Arbor Solarize, kind of a graphic about kind of getting started and who and how and what it's all about. And then a description of the roles and responsibilities. What does the project manager do? What does a host do? What does the installer do, et cetera? So that's just an introductory. Then phase 1 here, this is the pilot programming folder. And within there's a pilot overview folder, which just kind of describes, well, what's a pilot? It's one little Solarize. How do you start it? Here's how you start it. We have a timeline for you. So you can see at week 0, find a host. At week 1 to 3, host gets bids, etc. So it's kind of all laid out for you. And then here is the bulk of what you're going to need, which is outreach and meeting planning here. So here we have a whole bunch of forms that we've created. All of these, you can't edit them in the Google Drive, but you can download them for yourself and alter them. Everything is in here, and there are instructions on how to do that as well. So in here we have social media ads, sign up forms for coming to an event, how to onboard an installer. We have an FAQ that we send out ahead of the meeting to all participants that helps answer a lot of questions ahead of time, so the meetings aren't 5 hours long, which definitely tends to help. And an FAQ for installers as well. And a bit for installers here about what is the Solarize program and why might you want to participate, so that you can kind of know how to talk to an installer about what this is. Then in the third folder, we have meeting tools. So I've included 2 entire meetings, Zoom meetings, so you can see how it goes. I have our sample PowerPoint, sort of what we do in a PowerPoint. That's always changing, so it's probably already not accurate, but it's close. And then the meeting itself, sort of just what's included in a meeting. This is sort of the heart of the event. And I think it's important that the meetings are fun. And then finally, if that's the heart of the program, the guts of the program, and the post-meeting tools here. So we have a tracker right here. And this is our kind of participation tracker. This is how I help the installer. As I gather requests for estimates, I don't have them go right to the installer, because all of a sudden you've got 30 emails that are titled things like RSVP meeting, RERE, Solarize something, and then they'll get lost, right? So I'm in charge of trying to capture everybody's request for an estimate, and then gather the information the installer wants, which is usually the DTE bill. And some installers want other things, a picture of their electrical box or information about the age of the roof, or whatever the installer wants. I package it into a tidy email with a new title and send it off. And then I keep track here of all of the individuals. The individuals that I write here are then populated onto the second tab automatically. And this is where the installer and I communicate on a regular basis. So I will write, I received the DTE information on this date. I'll make an X here, and then that changes the whole row into that color. So if this person here, the X is, the estimate's been sent, as soon as they decide to sign it, I'll X there, and it turns the row green, so we can kind of visually see where we are, who hasn't been contacted yet, who are we waiting on something, that kind of thing. And then the final tab is where I capture energy savings information for my program. So I know how many kilowatts were sold, what was the savings, whether a battery was sold as well, because we like to track how much storage is going up in our city. And then I can calculate the total kilowatts that have been committed through the program in this way. So let me go back. Go back. Hang on. Aha, here we go. You can all see now we're back in the folder, correct? Yes, okay. So that's the event tracker. There's also video in here about how to use the event tracker that one of our interns puts together. It's very sweet. And an example of a feedback form, because we always send out feedback forms after every event to see how we could improve. So that's your pilot right there. It's everything you'd need to do a pilot. But also in this toolkit is after you've gotten your feet wet with a pilot and it went really, really well, and you think, wow, I want to grow the program. Like, this was easy and I want to keep doing it. Then phase 2 here is growing your program. And now we've got, let's see, that's not that interesting. Expanded advertising and outreach. How do you do yard signs? You know, this is what we do. We have power hours where we're talking about renewable energy, electrification, and efficiency, and we're funneling people in that way. Outreach to policymakers. How do you get support from others to do this? Installer recruitment, right here, we have a whole series of ways to recruit and onboard installers, and also how to vet them. So we rely largely on Michigan Saves for installer vetting, but there may be other questions and other vetting that you want to do up front. We also rely obviously on the hosts that are choosing the installers that they want to work with to do the vetting as well. So the city is not choosing winners and losers, but we are choosing to rely on Michigan Saves. And then data tracking. So, this is sort of where I keep track of all of the various groups that are going. And then finally, the last folder is just data templates. All the data templates you have seen everywhere else are in this folder. You can download them into your own computer and then adapt them. And there's an instruction guide right here on how to do that, so that you can download it, change its name, save it, and use it, adapt it, alter it, whatever you'd like to do. So like I said, this toolkit is for you. It's for everybody. It's for anyone who wants it. And I'm going to stop sharing. And how am I doing on time? Oh, yes, I still have 22 minutes. So that's the bulk of the presentation. That's how Solarize Ann Arbor works. That's how we came up with it. And that's how we're giving it away. So I guess I'm open for questions.
So Julie, I want to thank you so much. This is a great presentation. Some of us have worked for solar companies. We've been in this game for a long time. I've worked for local governments trying to get solar programs going and stuff. And the constant issue that has come up with solar companies, everyone I've ever met, was, this is a small business. Margins are slim, and the cost of getting the sale, getting the clients is the biggest cost. And the one thing that government can do and hasn't done until this program is generate a steady stream of qualified leads to qualified solar companies. And in essence, if you look at what's happening here, because the government is using its power of aggregation to drive qualified clients to cut installers, and asking those installers basically to take the money that they would have spent to find a qualified company and make a sale and stuff, and pass that along to the customers in the form of a discount. There is not one unit of government in Michigan, from townships to cities to counties. There's not one church. There's not one environmental organization. There's not one bowling league that couldn't do this Solarize program. It's that simple. So I think the key as we look here is cities are being hammered with climate change things and trying to figure out what they're going to do, and wishing they had a way to get solar to work in their community, and knowing they can't give away free tax breaks or more grants or anything else, all these traditional tools. This is a zero cost model. I mean, Julie's great. It could be done in communities without Julie. A college professor, a high school teacher could do this. Any house of worship representatives could do this. Local mayors could do this. Anybody who wants to run for city council, this is the platform to run on. Run a Solarize project, and then run for mayor, and then run for governor. So, we're so pleased to be able to team with Julie on this project and help out, because it is exactly what we've been begging governments to do for a long time. And thank goodness Ann Arbor stepped up for that. So with that, I'm going to be quiet and we'll take questions. Again, raise your hand, or under reactions, raise your hand, and we'll take a first question. And I see Janice Means has a question, so we'll take a question from Janice. Oh, you're on mute, Janice.
Okay. Are you referring to the question I put in? Yes, I was wondering if it could be extended to Oakland County, but it sounds like that's already been answered, that we can do it ourselves, basically, which is wonderful. Julie, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you and all that you've done. It's amazing.
Wow, thank you. Yeah, when GLREA approached me some time ago, Mark, I think, about launching this through my son, because there are chapters all over the state, correct, if I'm not mistaken. And so, it just from a capacity standpoint, I had to put a circle around me I'm doing other work with the city now as well, but easily my son chapters or individuals. I don't know about bowling alleys, Mark, but that was an interesting.
Hey, old school. Does anybody even know what a bowling alley is?
But yeah, and the truth is, like, if you wanted to, if anyone on this call wanted to start a Solarize program, start diving into the toolkit, take a look at it, get your toes wet. I am here I can help you. I can get on calls with you. I can like problem solve or answer questions. I can be a resource.
Good. John Sarver, you have a question, sir?
Yeah, Julie, that was a great presentation. A couple questions for you. One is, have you found that churches or civic organizations become kind of the host, or is it more like neighborhoods? And the second question is, when you're doing your heat pump program, are you focusing on furnaces or hot water heaters or both?
Yeah, great. Two great questions. We've seen different models depending on who the host is. So I've had hosts who it's centered in their neighborhood. In fact, there may be multiple neighbors that come together to host, and then it's very much their neighborhood, but we extend it out. So like Mark's will be Patton Gill and Friends, right? Or we've had Forest Brook and Friends, because we want to invite others in. The bigger the net, the more likely we're going to hit our numbers. Others I have approached, and I think we've had individuals who are very tied into an organization, whether it's a community center or congregation or like the YMCA, something like that. And then they do their outreach within that network of people. So it really just depends on the host, who they know. And that's how it works well. Yeah, I had one host recently who was very active in her synagogue, and she was able to get quite a few people from that outreach at her synagogue. And then the heat pump efforts, and we have now a bunch of information on our website about heat pumps. We're talking about electrification, period, of buildings, and every gas appliance, with the exception of a stove. Stoves can be transitioned to induction, and everything else is really, there's a heat pump option for a furnace, for a hot water heater, for dryers. Believe it or not, I know I'm missing one. What else do we have that's gas in our homes? Those are the big ones, I think. So, yep, all of it.
Just should mention, John, we're going to be doing a heat pump in August, I believe, a session on that. And so we'll be talking about the Julie's programs there. She's going to be doing a pilot program over the next year. So I expect that we'll see a heat pumps added into the Solarize program going forward in Ann Arbor. That's the plan.
I see someone's finger up. Ernesto, I think, had a finger up, but now I lost
Joe?
it.
Yeah. Thank you, Julia, for your wonderful presentation. And this is a wonderful initiative to generate energy. And I'm wondering if there's parallel efforts to reduce the consumption, as you said in your presentation, which is really critical. I mean, so many old houses that you can generate a lot of power, or it takes a lot of power to keep them warm.
It's such a good question, and it's I'm also really interested in talking to people with ideas around this, because we've been thinking about these things deeply. How do we apply the Solarize model to electrification, and how do we apply it to efficiency? And it's harder because people are ready to replace their furnaces at very different times. You can go solar whenever, right? So there's a timing issue. It would mean that your outreach has to be different, and you have to cast a wider net. It's not just that everyone how many people are going to need to replace their furnace in the next year. I don't know, unless you have a neighborhood that's, all the houses were built a certain era, and then maybe you could generate like some bulk there. Then the issues around efficiency are similar. I've thought about doing bulk kind of incentivization of energy audits. so that folks could, although they're not that expensive to begin with, they're like maybe $300 to get a really solid, robust energy audit of your home. But maybe if we had an incentivization, or we could give them away or somehow, so people could kind of at least know what's going on with their homes and what they're going to need.
Right.
And I've just begun thinking about sort of weatherization. Is there a way to then consolidate a bunch of people who all want to do air sealing or insulation? And so, yeah, right now we're at a capacity check because we're doing all the electrification work, but it is absolutely integral. And we want to figure out a way to make it work for these areas too. I appreciate the question.
Julie, we need to talk about that because our Better Buildings program for Michigan did exactly that. So it was an aggregation program for energy efficiency, and the energy audits, you got a rebate. You got to pay for the audit up front, but you got a rebate for the audit if you move forward.
Yeah.
Thing. And so we got a lot of models for that. So, and Michigan Saves is a partner with me on that. So
yeah,
yeah,
we do need to talk more about that because it's a crucial piece, and we need to elevate it. Yep.
Mr. Lee, you're up next.
Hello, thanks again, Julie. Great information. My question is related to growing the program and just looking at the future. So my first question is related to, have you ever tried this program for like businesses? Have you ever got business together and try to do a similar thing?
It's a great question, and it's something that we're thinking about. I did a small amount of sort of poking around to see if we could do a similar program for businesses. And I haven't gained traction with it yet. I've been talking with Jan Culbertson at the 2030 district because she is very tied into the businesses in the Ann Arbor area and working with them on deep efficiency and, you know, reducing their carbon footprints. And she also senses more hesitancy. A lot of times the math is just different with businesses, not always, but the downtown businesses, for example, have very small roofs. They're small businesses and they have a lot of HVAC equipment on the roof, and it's not going to offset an enormous amount of their energy use just because of the structure of the building. And therefore, the obvious place to aggregate businesses is like in a downtown, your DDA, your, you know, and they were more incentivized to reduce and do efficiency work for their own bottom line. We haven't gone yet to look at larger businesses with large roofs, which would be great, but it's on our radar. In fact, looking at, one of our interns is working on GIS mapping to look at the best roofs so that we can then approach the, you know, some of the businesses that we think could really benefit from this. I was talking earlier, we're working through a model in Ann Arbor that's not quite ready to announce or launch that would enable us to really unlock a lot more solar potential on business roofs through a structure basically where we're utilizing roof space almost in a leasing kind of way, and using the money generated from that to put into a low to moderate income access fund where we take the savings generated, since let's say a small business or an individual has a roof and they're not necessarily going to put solar on it because they don't have the capital or the credit, or that's not how they want to tie up their money, but they're willing to let us use it and lock in their energy rates with DTE. So instead of climbing, they just lock them in, but they don't gather the savings. We get the savings, put it into an LMI fund, and then use that to do weatherization and energy efficiency upgrades for LMI low-income households for whom energy bills are really quite high. So we're working, and then I'm thinking businesses might fit there well. There may be a value proposition for businesses in regards to PR as well, because here you are lending us your roof and giving all that money to the low income, and we can do all kinds of outreach and PR around that. So we have a whole structure in mind. There's a lot of things going.
My second question briefly was related to the LMI, and my question is more along as your modeling of this program. You think you'll get to a point where you're able to clearly understand how low you can drop a price of insulation from getting X amount of people signed up? And I'm thinking that because there may be customers who are just on the edge of being able to afford it, but can't. And so I'm very sensitive to the Detroit area. I grew up in Detroit, and there's a lot of potential there, but a lot of people can't afford it. So I'm thinking about, again, is there a way that we can start looking at some equations to say, okay, well, we can get X amount of people signed up, then we can get these amount of, installations, and people who couldn't afford it can. Is there approach to get to that level of fidelity with your?
Yeah, so it's a great question, and I really appreciate it. Essentially, there's going to be a floor, I think, and there are going to be a group of people for whom there's no way they're ever going to be able to wrap up any kind of credit, or they don't have credit or capital to put solar up, no matter how low we drive the costs.
Sure.
So that's why the LMI program, what I want to do is get people who are happy to host solar, don't necessarily want to spend money on it, happy to give us the financial benefits of that. And then we can use that not only to benefit low-income folks for energy efficiency, but also to subsidize solar on their own roof if they own their roof, because then you get the whole renter question. The other thing that we've started talking about within Solarize groups, and we haven't manifested it yet, mostly because I've got like 14 balls in the air all at the same time. But when we have a host right now is talking about it, working with the group, if it's a big, robust group, to say, let's see if we can pay it forward, do a little donation and pitch in to get solar for someone else in the group. So you're getting this big savings. How about you pitch in? And I bet the installers, a lot of them are willing to do, some kind of discounted, for their labor, that kind of thing. So maybe each group could center one donated array as well. So these are the ideas that we're kind of thinking through. Great questions.
So, Mr. Lee, BLRA has a chapter forming in Detroit. Diane Van Buren, who's on our board, is running that. If you send me an email, I will put you in touch with Diane. These are some of the projects that she's looking at as well. So I'm sure she would love to talk with you.
Sure, I'll talk with Diane. So thank you.
So just send me an email and I'll put you in touch with her. Jay, you're up next.
The piece that we're talking about regarding the habits of the household is crucial. At Power Home, one of the things that we do that most companies haven't done so far, we bring in what we call an EEP, which is an energy efficiency package, which is all about tightening up the house on all levels so that the people can actually maximize their savings, and talking to them about what they can do to reduce what they're doing already. People think they're going to put solar in their house, and all of a sudden, bam, it's free energy forever. They can do what they want to do. You have to be willing to change your habits also. If you're used to leaving lights on all through the night and so forth, whatever your thing is, you got to learn to change those habits. So that's part of our educational package with what we do is that energy efficiency package. So, that's something that's crucial. When I go into my clients that are on the commercial side, while I'm going through the facility, looking at their building, I'm asking them about their insulation, their roof, their windows and so forth, their HVAC. And they ask me, well, you're the solar guy. Why are you asking about all these other things? I said, before we put the solar on, before we put on the solar, let's tighten up everything else so you're buying less solar. You don't need to spend as much money, and we can make you more efficient. So then I bring in the partners that are in the other disciplines, and we all come in as a team. And in some cases now we're doing PACE financing for the bigger clients and so forth, which will pay for everything at one time. And on that level with the PACE, in order for it to qualify for PACE, you have to be able to prove on paper the savings from all the improvements alone will pay for the systems, so that your cash flow positive from day one. So there's things there that we can do on the residential side with this program. You're talking about, this is a great program, Julie. This is a great program. And I'd like to talk with you more about what we do and help you to do those things as well. Bringing those things into the table at these meetings, and as you're sharing with people in large group, this can really get them thinking, even if they don't do the solar, how can they save energy even if they can't do the solar? So there's a lot of benefit there to that educational piece of how to tighten up your home. And we'll talk about that offline.
We got time for one more question. Mike, I think you're up.
Thank you very much. I think a lot of my issues was addressed when Mr. Lee asked his question. I was talking about getting this type of program involved in a less prosperous prosperous than Ann Arbor has. So, you know, I was thinking, I live in Genesee County, and so, you know, there's lower income, a lot of lower income folks in that area. So that was kind of my area that I was going to ask question on.
Absolutely. And it's totally valid. You know, rooftop solar has come down and down and down and down in cost. So sometimes we also find that, you know, folks are surprised. It's not cheap, but it's not what they thought either. And, you know, with Michigan Saves providing these kind of easy loans to be able to wrap it over time, you know, it's doable. The loss of net metering hurt for sure. But you know, but we're trying to make up the gap for that. And the other struggle I have around low income individuals and how to help them with renewable energy without true community solar yet is that a lot of them don't own their roofs. And then you have this split incentive of landlord and tenant, and we're working through that structure as well. Is there a way to use our LMI structure to put solar on landlord roofs and benefit the tenants? And then the landlord pays it off over time and then owns it eventually. And so it benefits the landlord, and it's a marketing avenue as well. So we're, and then depending on the renter, if they are income qualified, they could be paying at a much lower rate. And if they are not income qualified, then they could be paying at a rate that mimics what they would pay just to DTE. So we have all these, you know, right now we're playing with these structures and models about how it's such a tricky question on how to help the folks that really need the help the most with their energy bills.
So
Thank you very much.
one of the models that I've been toying with, and I haven't even talked to Julie about this one yet, but you know, if you have an aggregation model where we have 10 or more, they get a 15% discount stuff. So if I just took a $15,000 system and took 15% of that, you know, it's roughly $2,000, $2,500. So if we have an aggregation group of 10 people and we said, which of you would be willing to donate your discount and take a tax deductible charitable contribution for the donation of that discount, enough so that we can get a $15,000 system put on a low income home or put on as a donation. Now, I don't think necessarily all 10 people would do it, but we don't need all 10 people to do it. We just need a handful to do it. So, you know, I think this model, it can do a lot. You know, we're just beginning to see the power of this aggregation. And I like to think of it as the power of community. You know, you get people together, things get done. And this is a way to bring together like thinkers and ask these kinds of questions. So I don't think it's limited to a neighborhood or a lower income stuff, but I do think it would be interesting to have either probably Michigan Interfaith Power Light or someone like that work with other communities like Ann Arbor, richer communities, and say, you're going to do, you know, put in a megawatt of solar, you know, how about, you know, 2 or 3, you know, Solarize Ann houses here in Detroit or Genesee or other places. All this is possible. And my sense is if we put this together and think this started moving, foundations, community foundations are out there. We've got large foundations. I'd like to go get DTE Foundation to pay for some of these. I think we should ask them to pay for installations and put up distributed solar. And then
good luck with DTE.
Well, you know, I look forward to the story that says they refuse to do it, hitting the paper, but they'd much prefer to have the positive ones. With that, John Freeman, you got anything you want to say? You're the executive director here. And
well, I just want to thank everybody for showing up tonight. It's been great. I also want to introduce Catherine, who is joined us tonight. She is going to be, I think it's pretty much a done deal. She's going to be interning with us. So I'm really pleased that she was able to come on tonight, learn about this program, and then meet some of our GLREA members. And I just want to encourage other people who are not members at GLREA to become a member of the organization. You can go on the website and look under the membership tab, and then just scroll down and click on the green button that says become a member. And then it'll take you to the various membership options. And so we encourage everybody to become a member, because our influence as an organization grows as the membership grows. And there was a couple of references about trying to move legislation in Lansing. And we are button heads against the utilities. And so we just need to get bigger and stronger in order to to get legislators to listen to us versus the utilities. But I want to thank Julie for doing this, and I look forward to working with her to promote this around the state. So thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for having me.
Mark, you're on mute.
John Sarver, would you want to say a word about where this video will be and how people can get to it? And when it will be loaded on our GLREA YouTube?
Well, yeah, if you want to find any of the videos from these Zoom presentations, just do a search for on YouTube for Great Lakes Renewable Energy Association, and you should be able to find us. We've got like over 40 videos now for the various presentations we've done over the past year. So, if somebody would have enjoyed this program, feel free to refer them to the YouTube channel.
And we'll get this up, Mark, within the next day or two, because I have the recording and I'll upload it either tomorrow or the latest on Monday.
Super. Julie Roth, thank you so very much. You're coming back, I know, and in the future we'll see you again. So I'll look forward to it. Thank you for your work.